Thank you, friends, for having me. It's a delight to get to be here with you again. Yes, it's been a little while. You know, this is a wonderful topic for Sunday service. It's one that's very dear to my heart, the foolish virgins and the wise virgins. And it's charming to me because sometimes people feel really badly for those foolish virgins who didn't get the lamp of or oil for their lamp. But I feel a little bit differently. I feel like, well, I feel like I've been a perpetual foolish virgin, so why bother about feeling sad about it? Let's just try and learn to be wise virgins. And the reason I'm smiling about this, like as I am, is all that requires is a new affirmation to live in a new way today. And I'm grinning ear to ear because I was very touched by this affirmation that you all do together to draw and magnetize a new center or location, it seems like, for your center in Texas. And I was very touched, Mayatri and Mark, because you said the affirmation, and Mark, you came in with so much energy, it like, almost took me out of my chair. And I thought, that's the spirit. That's the way to do it. That's the way to create new energy and new dynamism and to make up for past errors. And it's interesting, the American spirit is so exemplary in many ways that I was just listening to Swami talk about this, that he said Master Yogananda loved Americans and he loved the American spirit because they have this belief that anything is possible, anything can be done, we can do it, and in spite of the odds, and that sometimes Americans are a little bit naive, though we don't like to be considered as such, because like, the example he gave is he said 90% of new businesses fail within 2 years. And what Swamiji pointed out is he said that means that 90% of people who started businesses had kind of no idea what they were doing and failed. But isn't that wonderful? That means that so many people were so willing, were so enthusiastic, had so much faith, had so much dynamism that they were willing to try, that they were willing to put out that energy. So much more noble to put out that energy, to try daringly, to try courageously. And that's even built into the very fabric of this nation's DNA. I mean, the very stroke of our own independence was talk about a long shot, an affirmation cast out in a dark night. But somehow it managed to work because we clung to Dharma, to a truth, and to an ideal presented by God. And through God's grace and through a whole lot of self effort, it managed to bring something incredible into creation. And so I was very touched to hear the power with which you intoned that affirmation, because that, in a way, is exactly the answer to this week's reading. Is just as Sri Yukteswar said to forget the past. The vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames, but everything in future will improve if we are making the spiritual effort now. And therein lies the secret to success is can we make that spiritual effort now? Can we strike out boldly with faith, with ever new confidence, and perhaps with just a little tint of craziness? That, as Nayaswami Devarshi said once in a satsang he gave to my group when I was in living discipleship, he said a devotee must be a little bit crazy to believe he can succeed. And that, and we've often talked about this, the law of karma would indicate that we have millions of incarnations of error behind us, millions of incarnations of mistakes. And if you could see all those mistakes lined up, it would be all so tempting to just throw down your efforts and give up. But we can't, luckily, very thankfully. But what Devarshi was saying was he said to be a really successful devotee, to be a really successful Kriya yogi, we must have just a little bit of craziness in us. Meaning that the analogy he gave is he said one day he was walking to his meditation, to a 3 hour meditation on a Friday night. And he was, it was after a long week or busy week at work, and he was feeling a little bit uh, discouraged about the prospects of the meditation to come. And he said, as he was walking across the field towards the Lahiri Mandir at Ananda village, for any of you who have been there, as he was crossing that field, when he was at one end, he was feeling very low energy and uninspired about the meditation to come. That's the foolish version. That's the foolish virgin who's run out of the devotion in her lamp, who's run out of that luster of the heart's yearning for God. And Devarshi was having a moment like that. And the thing is, these moments happen all the time. We have foolish moments and we have wise moments every single day, don't we? But so there Devarshi was on one side of the field having a moment of being a foolish virgin that the lamp of his heart's devotion had burned dry for just a moment. And as he was walking across the field, thinking to himself, oh, this might be a very long meditation indeed, as perhaps all of us have experienced when you try to sit down to a long meditation when you're not feeling particularly inspired. It's very hard, isn't it? It takes a lot of will and it feels like a task rather than a pleasure. And so there he was, walking across this field, when suddenly the madcap thought occurred to him, what if today's the day? What if this is it? And if we remember an autobiography of a yogi, it is after a restless meditation that Yogananda is given the experience of samadhi. He said, Sri Yukteswar said to him, I know how you're meditating with your thoughts distributed like leaves on the wind. I identify with that statement, perhaps a little more than would be best for a yogi, but that happens to me from time to time. But Devarshi said he had that thought, that crazy thought. What if today's the day that Divine Mother comes to me? What if I can actually feel her presence in this meditation? And he said by the time he walked across that field to the Lahiri Mandir, he was filled with hope, with inspiration, with devotion. And he said he had one of the great 3-hour meditations of the recent time during that period of his life. Now, that is a story that all of us can remember and can apply to our own lives. Because in the course of time that it took him to walk from one side of that field to the other, he went from being the foolish virgin to being the wise virgin. He went in our affirmation from going from thinking of himself only in relationship to his body to remembering who he was in truth, bliss infinite, eternal love. Immortal am I, ageless am I, deathless am I, because of that hope of God's presence. And so we think, in the parable of the wise and foolish virgins, we can think that it's cruel that the groomsman comes when the virgins are gone collecting new oil. But the fact is, this is happening constantly. For God is always here, is he not? Isn't that what the masters tell us? That God is present in every atom of creation, in every moment of time, but the only thing that keeps us from him is our ability to see. And so every moment that we're not caught up in ecstasy, every moment that we're not engrossed in the presence of God, that our heart is not afire with love, we are a foolish virgin. But every moment that that lamp of our love for God is lit, and that we're aspiring for that inner experience, we are a wise virgin. Because the truth is, we never know when that samadhi experience will burst upon the shores of our consciousness. It could come at any moment. And so we should prepare ourselves. We should make straight the way for the coming of the Lord, as it says in the Bible. We should prepare the way. So when it comes, we don't get caught so flat-footed and so surprised. And I have a funny story about just that I'd like to share. But before I do so, I'd like to share a song. As Mayatri said, we'll be doing some music together today. And this song is one of my favorites from the oratorio, and this is In the Spirit. And this is an incredible song about uh, John, one of the disciples of Christ, who goes deep into the wilderness, and not just the wilderness of the world, but the wilderness of his inner experience, and has a great revelation of the presence of God and of the nature of God. And this song has a tremendous vibration to lift us into that experience of God's presence, into the living mystical awe of God's love. And so as I sing this, if you know it, actually sing with me, because this is one of the great advantages of being on Zoom. I mean, if we were in person, we could sing it together anyway. But sing behind the comfort and the safety of your own home. Sing with me if you happen to know this song. And if you don't, I invite you to sit up straight, close your eyes, and just imagine, wonder, and wonder what it would be like if this song were the spontaneous melody of your own heart, the spontaneous melody of your own experience. And let's try and use our imagination, use it like an affirmation to taste, even if only gently, what that bliss of God contact would truly be like. I was caught up in ecstasy. 'Twas a day sanctified by God. There he showed me the truths of heaven, truths which all seeking him should know. How the soul made to live in freedom and reclaim its eternal right. How the night born of our delusions can be fired blazing with his light. Just pause for a moment together and see if you can imagine what that ecstasy would be like. There he showed me the truths of heaven, truths which all seeking him should know. Magnificent, isn't it? And just because I delight in this melody, so I'd like to play it for you now on the cello. Because it's actually very interesting to observe and feel how even just the melodies which Swami and Yogananda gave us contain so much consciousness. They have so much power to uplift and change us. So now just let's continue this experience and just close your eyes and imagine that this sound is the melody of Om, helping to bring your soul into its expanded state of God union. Now, why is it important, one might ask, to listen to songs like this, to sing songs like this? Because at first it might seem a little too far out of our own reach. The lyrics, there 'twas a day sanctified by God. There he showed me the truths of heaven, truths which all seeking him should know. And we might listen to a lyric like that, or we might sing it, and a part of our own mind might say, yeah, right. That's not my experience. That's not what I've had in my meditation. I'm lucky if I feel a little calmness or if my thoughts don't bother me for just a moment. And that's fine. That's fair, that's honest, and that's necessary. But what listening to music like this does, what singing this music does, is it conditions your mind to the possibility of divine contact. And that is so important because the thing is, when we keep the lamp of our heart's aspiration lit, and when we condition the mind to the possibility that God may come at any moment, then if he actually does come, we won't blow him away with the restlessness of our own hearts. And what I mean by that is this. Perhaps some of you have had a similar experience, but once my first real experience of superconsciousness was when I was a young boy and I was meditating with Ananda Living Wisdom School. And they would have us meditate every Wednesday and Friday mornings, or something like that. I can't remember which days exactly. But we would meditate in this small, uninsulated yurt at the downtown area of Ananda Village. And I remember in December, much like now, it was quite cold in the mornings, and there would be frost and ice on the ground when I would arrive. And the little tarp backings of the yurt we were in was no protection against the elements. It was probably colder inside than it was outside because at least the sun would heat up the air. And we'd turn on the little electric heater, and I think we would sit down and chant, or maybe I think they had us energized and then we would meditate. But needless to say, most of the time I was rather grumpy about this proposition. A little bit grumpy to have to sit there in this cold yurt meditating while it was actually funny that the boys all went into the freezing cold yurt and the fairer gender got to go into a air heated building. So there was a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about that. But there I was one day, and I'll never forget it because I was energized. We sat down and we began practicing Hong Sa. We were left to practice on our own. And after, grumbling and gnashing my teeth and feeling cold and all that, I must have actually slipped into a deep practice of Hong Sa. And I remember focusing on the Hong Sa technique and trying to do it with sincerity. And then suddenly, the awareness of my body dropped away. And the awareness of being caged by my personality, by the limitations of this little ego fell away. And suddenly, out of the vastness of this new awareness, which stole upon me unnoticed, but suddenly out of this new vastness of my own inner awareness came plummeting towards me the spiritual eye, as it had often been described to me. I saw the golden ring with the blue light and a silver star at the center come plunging at me at the speed of light. And as it suddenly came blazing in all of its glory in front of my inner vision, I thought to myself with excitement, why, that's the spiritual eye. And as soon as I thought that, it disappeared. And I found myself suddenly, rather rudely, put once again into this limited body. And I could feel my heart pounding in excitement. My breath had returned into my body. And I knew that I would not be able to simply close my eyes and see it again because my own restlessness had blown it away. And I knew that. And I didn't tell anybody about this experience for a long time. I held it as very sacred to me because I felt that God had reached out and touched me, but my own restlessness blew it away. Much like Sri Yukteswar in Autobiography of a Yogi, when he meets Babaji for that second time, and Babaji disappears, and Babaji says, I was veritably extinguished by the gusts of your restlessness. And so too God is. by our own restlessness. And so that's why we must precondition our minds to the possibility that God may steal upon our hearts at any moment, because he might, just like he did to me when I was just a boy, meditating in a cold yurt on a December morning. But I was so surprised. My own surprise made that experience end. And so we should practice. We should imagine. We should listen to this music. We should keep the lamp of our heart's aspiration and of our heart's reckless hope lit. So when the day comes that God does appear to us, we won't be surprised, but it will feel like the most natural thing of all. And we'll simply call out, "Oh, there you are at last. Now I may offer into your light all of what I am, all of what I've done, all that I shall ever be." And so music plays a very important part in this. This is why Yogananda perhaps said chanting is half the battle, because it helps us to awaken that lamp, to light that lamp of our love constantly, to keep it lit. And so music has been an imperative part of my sadhana, of my spiritual growth, and really a cornerstone of how I am happy. And I actually noticed just over the last 3 months, in an effort to do my very best in my work, I wasn't able to chant as much as I often had before. And I realized just a few weeks ago that I was in a lot of trouble because I hadn't been singing for about 3 months. I hadn't been chanting or playing music. And lo and behold, it was a very challenging time for me until I got that turned around and began chanting again. So all this to say, if you could take one thing away from our time together, I would encourage you to sing. Listen to Swami's music. Chant the chants that Yogananda gives us. And chant them like Mark did that affirmation, with gusto, with energy, with power, and with reckless enthusiasm, with the belief that today will be the day, that you will penetrate through the veil of Maya and experience God in all of his glory. And don't let the weight of your past karma and of the learning you might have yet to do discourage you, but be a little bit crazy. Maybe today's the day. Maybe today's the day. So thank you, friends.
Thank you, Keshava. What a beautiful message, and we loved your playing too. Maybe you get to play another thing for us in a little while. I did want to mention to you, it sounded beautiful, but we wondered if your original sound was on for
Oh,
that.
bummer, it is on, but I wonder if just the acoustics in this room
Yeah,
chew it
it
up.
wasn't. It
And
wasn't.
sometimes it's just network
Yeah, yeah,
stuff that,
but
that
it still
causes
was
it.
very beautiful.
Yes.
And we really appreciate it. So, well, everybody, you can open your cameras now, and if you have a question or comment, you can either address it, directly or through the chat. We are going to go off of Facebook in just a moment, and our Facebook friends, we invite you to come on through our Zoom link on our website if you'd like to join the satsang portion. And so we'll go off of Facebook now and welcome any questions and comments. So,
Hi, Keshava.
Hey,
This
Alex.
is Alex Gustafson. I was on last time that you were on, and I just wanted to share. I have a book here. It's Sayings of Lahiri
Uh-huh.
by Swami Premananda, uh, early disciple of Yogananda.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to read from just 2 paragraphs from this book here. And
Please.
it's just along the same lines or whatever. The human body is the sacred instrument and holy medium of self-unfoldment and self-expression. Its primary purpose is to manifest all the righteous qualities of mind, heart, and soul. Man needs his body to bring into fruition and creative beneficence the divinity endowed qualities of his soul. What a lamp is to the light, a body is to the soul. And that's just a saying of Lahiri. So I just wanted to share that.
Perfect. Very much in accordance with our reading from Rays of the One Light. Thank you, Alex. Good to see you again.
Good to see
good
you.
to, yeah, good to see you, Alex. So in the chat, it says, what books did the readings come from? That they came from Rays of the One Light, and those are weekly commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. You can get those from Crystal Clarity, and also the Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Kriyananda. If you go to crystalclarity.com, you can find them there, or probably Amazon too. So.
And while we're talking about books, what was what's the title of the book that you read from, Alex?
You can put it in the chat, would probably be helpful.
Yeah.
So anybody else? Let's see. Lots of people here. Show our list here so I can.
Yeah, any questions or song requests? We could just play some music together too.
We don't have our Austin group on today because they're in person with Supriya. Supriya went down to Austin to visit a friend and decided to also meet in person with our Austin meditation group. So none of our Austin folks are on today, but we've got another good group. We've got some folks from California. I see Pam and Sam are here. There's Mike.
And there's Mike's mic.
Hello. Excuse me. Nice to see you. Hey, Keshava. Thank you very much for joining us today. I had the opportunity to take vacation in France in September. And in Paris, there was this beautiful chapel called Saint-Chapelle. And I just looked up, it's supposed to be the second most beautiful church or cathedral in Paris. And in Saint-Chapelle, like in a lot of churches and cathedrals in Europe, I got to be you could go right up to where the stone carvings are. And they had like on one side of the arch, the lady with the, showing that there was nothing in her vessel. There was no oil in her vessel. And then on the other side of the door, there's, the wise virgin has oil in her vessel. And I'm just thinking about how different it might be. People didn't necessarily read back in those days. And so they would learn by seeing these things on the church doors, as compared to even the possibility of being crazy enough to think that I and my Father are one is for me. And that how do you think that the how that was understood back then? How do you believe it was understood back then to how you believe it's understood now, and the additional potential in that message that we have with Ananda and with all of our ability to commune with the divine?
Wow, that's a good question. Very fun that you got to go to that wonderful chapel in France. I bet that was very uplifting. But you make a good point, of course, that the Bible being shrouded in Latin and held in such tight grips of the church for so long. I mean, that was the whole point of Luther, wasn't it? Just to make it so people could read the Bible and not have it just be the priests who did it. Certainly this wisdom was withheld in part from some of the people, and it would be very hard to understand Christ's real mystical teachings if you weren't a hermit or in an order like with Saint Francis, with a real saint who understood it deeply and who could transmit that understanding to you through his magnetism. But really, the answer seems to me to be that the custodians of religion are always the saints. And so, yes, people will definitely learn through ideology, that's not the right word, symbolism, and by making the sculptures and things like this on the door. But really, who will always learn from is the examples of the saints. And so, if I were a peasant in the year 800, I don't know that I would learn so much by looking at a picture on the wall. But if there was a very saintly man who lived in the town, perhaps could learn from him. And it's interesting that, like you say, then we have evolved in this Dwapara Yuga, and now as Yogananda said, the time for knowing God has come. And that because of the advancement of our human consciousness as a whole, and we could break that down into all the different ways in which that has manifested, down to simple things like communication and written language and the internet and globalization and all this. But it has enabled us, like you're saying, to have a more close contact with the deep mystical teachings. We were just had a Kriya initiation last night here, and I was reminded that this technique, Kriya Yoga, used to be withheld from the world, that you had to be a complete renunciate and go live in the mountains and, have nothing, have only a loincloth to receive such a sacred technique. And now here we are, all of us living our lives, doing our varying things. Some of us might be dentists or doctors or whatever it may be. It doesn't even matter. And yet we have the living link to Babaji in the Himalayas. And so you're absolutely correct in that there has been this huge renaissance that this line of masters have initiated to bring into the world Kriya Yoga, that mystic key to that saying which you just brought up, I and my Father are one. That if you went to, again, like that peasant in the year 800 and you told him, hey, you and God are one, the next thing you'd know, he'd be chasing you around town with a pitchfork. So we've come a long way, and it's just delightful to get to be here at this time, isn't it? That, we get to be a part of this great renaissance of God realization.
Beautiful answer, and thank you so very much. I'm so happy that you expressed on this. And it is a renaissance. It's like a present day renaissance
Yeah.
that I feel like we are having. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add into that conversation. It seems, interesting that here we are in Dwapara Yuga. Um, we're not illiterate peasants anymore, but in a way, those illiterate peasants may have had an advantage over us in that they didn't have so much intellectual stuff going on to get in the way of just pure devotion. And so it seems like to me that a lot of what we have to do in this modern age is find ways to get our minds out of the way
Mm.
so we can feel that. And so I wanted, in that vein, I wanted to ask you, what do you do to make that transition from foolish virgin to wise virgin? I'm sure that music is going to play a part of that, but I'm wondering if there's anything else that you can offer in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, and I think worthy of answering in two ways, because you brought up the good point that today in our modern society we do fall prey to a host of worries that perhaps our Dark Age predecessors did not have to worry about in exactly the same way. Though they were worried about gathering enough food for the winter, they didn't have cell phones buzzing and notifying them and making them feel inadequate because they didn't get 100 Facebook likes. So life has changed, and it's not necessarily easier or it's just different. Things are different now than they were before. And it's interesting. One thing to consider is definitely the restlessness of the mind. That Maya, one of Maya's great tricks, I think, is it's playing right now in our society, is restlessness. Even if you look in our television that we watch and the music that most people listen to, the pace is endless, restless, and it never stops. And I find myself, in idle moments checking my phone. And then 30 seconds later, I'm checking it again. And then I catch myself and I say, Keshava, what could have happened in 30 seconds? And your phone is on vibrate. It would have told you if it needed you. And so I have been trying to, so to answer your question, one thing, I try not to fall prey to the modern pitfalls. I try to use technology rather than allow it to use me. I try to participate and utilize these things that are available to me to be useful to my life and to be useful in my service, but not to allow them to eat me. So that's one simple way that does help retain the power of your own heart and the calmness of your mind, because without calmness in the mind, we cannot penetrate into the deeper realms of inner awareness and meditation. So, I mean, simply unplugging is very helpful. I like to take moments of silence, seclusion, if possible, even just a few hours to go be in nature, sometimes when I can't get away from my other responsibilities, I only have a few hours, I'll just go to the beach or go to the woods. And I mean, even if sometimes I was so tired, I'd go to the beach and all I would do is literally, I fell asleep on the beach. But when I woke up, I was so much more calm because, like, the waves just carried away all the restlessness of this modern life. But now to your other question, what do I do to keep that lamp of my heart lit? I watch my thoughts right now, and I watch which direction my heart is going and where my thoughts are going. And, if you make a game of paying attention to your thoughts, paying attention to your awareness moment to moment, one thing you'll begin to see more clearly is that your meditations are not isolated events, but that they are a part of the flow of your entire consciousness throughout the day. And so, really, we're constantly preparing for meditation. We are constantly needing to keep that lamp lit. And so, what I would do is I would notice if ever my mind or my heart fell into petty thoughts or preoccupations with the world, or sometimes frustration even, or anger or upset feelings, or hurt, or dwelling on the past. What's been useful to me is, rather than trying to go in and fix the problem at its source, I just, like, instead of trying to do neurosurgery on my brain, and oh, I'm remembering that grief that happened to me 4 years ago, and oh, I'm going to pause and go in and try and get to the very heart of it and what that person said to me. Like, let's just get a new brain in. And so, what I've been doing instead is, when those thoughts arise, I just start doing japa, or I'll just start chanting a mantra. And actually, for about the last 6 months or so, I've been doing the Gayatri mantra very intensely. And so sometimes I've done 3, 4, 5 hours of Gayatri mantra a day. And I'll practice it out loud, and then I'll do it silently, and it'll just be cooking in the back of my mind. And that mantra has really helped me, and I can feel it bringing light into the brain and washing away old troubles. And then when I sit down to meditate, it's the light of that mantra that lifts me into the practice, rather than having to sort of hack away the jungle of all of my negative thoughts from the day. So, yes, and then, like you said, music is a big part for me. I try to sing every day as much as I can, as much as I can remember to. And I make it a point to chant every single day. Even if, I'm in a rush or it's inconvenient, I try to chant every day. That's very helpful for me. Of course, the other thing that I've been enjoying recently, if we're talking on personal notes, is I've been reading some of Swami's poetry, because I love poetry. I actually just love words. And so, sometimes it's hard for me to, after a long week, a long day, to sit down and study like the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, because I feel like my brain's tired. I don't want to have to work it any harder. And I should learn to, yes, develop greater willpower and resilience, but sometimes I just got to let the horse go and run a little bit. And I discovered that I love Swamiji's poetry, and I love the way he uses language in things like the peace treaty. And so I'll just go read the peace treaty now, and I'll just enjoy his use of language and delight in his turn of phrase. Or I'll read some P.G. Wodehouse and I'll laugh and I'll be delighted in that. So these are good ways that I've found to help keep that lamp of my heart lit.
All right, thank you for that. I didn't realize that Swami did a lot of poetry. I mean, of course, like you mentioned the peace treaty, but are there other sources that you can name that?
Well, he wrote a few other plays, so those would be some starting points: Jewel in the Lotus and The Singer and the Nightingale. But then he did write some poetry. Like, he wrote a beautiful poem, Ram, in Ram's fair Ayodhya. And I think he wrote a few other standalone pieces. Now, where to find them, I wouldn't know. But perhaps Asha would. But for right now, I'm just enjoying the peace treaty. I'm getting into it. Um,
Okay.
yeah. But, the other thing you could do is, if you contacted Treasures Along the Path, you could get all the recordings of Swamiji reading P.G. Wodehouse. Those are so delightful. Yeah. Highly recommended.
Okay. Any other questions? I know that Victoria mentioned your rendition or version of Land Beyond My Dreams, and maybe when we get near the end, maybe you can do,
Sure,
take
we
us
could
out
chant
with,
that.
Do an
yeah,
encore.
yeah, that'll be your encore or
Okay,
whatever.
great. I have a harmonium here. We could definitely do that.
Okay. And but anyway, folks, any other questions here? We've got this.
I have a question. Can I ask one more question? I was just wondering, it said on your bio that you'd been studying astrology, and I was
Yes.
just wondering how much you've studied.
Well, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
enough, Lord,
my
oh, never enough.
my
Um,
question is, on the 27th of January coming up, the sun conjuncts the natal Pluto of the United States of America.
hmm.
And I'm just wondering if you know anything about that, about if it's going to be a rebirthing energy or if it's going to be a destructive energy for the United States.
Well, so one thing that would be good to first to understand is the sun makes its complete circuit around the sky every year. So the sun will transit United States natal Pluto every single year, right around the same time. And so if one were really interested, you could make an observation every year and you could say sort of what social events happen or are sparked or do we become aware of collectively around this time every year. And it would be interesting to see if you could, notice any recurring patterns. Now, the other thing is Pluto. I study Jyotish, which is the Vedic astrology of India. And in traditional Jyotish, they did not include those outward planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so actually, I don't have much to say about those planets at this time. And that's something that I'll probably study in a little bit longer, but I haven't yet got to them. So I don't really have much more of a comment then in that regard. But what I can say is the sun uh, in the United States horoscope is a very positive planet because it rules its ninth house of dharma and of righteousness and truth. So the sun is a very important planet for the United States. And so any time that the sun is transiting over another planet, it would probably bring out a high quality of whatever that planet would represent. So when the sun would transit over, say, the United States native Jupiter, the United States might be expected to be a little bit more expansive or to have a moment of inspiration or to have a new sense of national identity or things like this. And so just in general, it would be interesting to watch the sun's progression in relationship to our nation. But if you wanted to help, because actually that's one of the things that I love most about astrology, is not just to be able to make idle predictions, because that's just sort of like being a weatherman. But as my mentor Drupada says, I'd rather learn to be a weather maker. And so if you want to help the United States, the sun being such a good planet for this country, you could do Gayatri mantra on behalf of our nation. And if Pluto does, Pluto is the god of the dead and of the underworld in Roman mythology. And so if, perhaps the sun is going to dredge up some past karmas and have to face some past grievances from the underworld during that time, maybe you should strengthen the sun on behalf of our great nation. And maybe you should chant 12 to 36 Gayatri mantras every day between now and that transit and offer that practice to God to help heal these wounds and to bring light to our nation.
Oh, I
And
like that. I
then
like
when you
that.
finish that practice, then you'd have something to say about it, and you would have done something constructive to help build a new and brighter future.
That's very nice. Thank you so much for that advice. I really
Sure.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
So what does the weatherman say?
Yeah.
Like,
Just briefly, this is actually something that I'll be talking more about on a New Year's Day retreat with Asha, which maybe we'll be able to broadcast if some of you would like to attend that. But I'm hopeful about 2022. The best news that I have is, yeah, exactly. I see Leah's. Yes, yes. I'm also sort of emphatically chanting that. The For the last years, since about 2020, the planet Jupiter, who is the guru planet, who is the bringer of blessings, the bringer of gifts, and the expander of our consciousness, he has been sort of locked in the dungeon basement in his point of debilitation in Capricorn with a rather stern jailer, Saturn. And it's been a tough period, as we all can sort of notice that, we've been in lockdown, which is very Capricornian type thing. There's been a lot of power struggles of the old power trying to retain its grip on the world. And it hasn't been very much fun. Like inspiration has been sort of caged away in that constellation Capricorn. But Jupiter has broken free and he's now in Aquarius, which is much better. Aquarius is a much more expansive and personal constellation of truth and wanting to think about the needs of the whole rather than just individual gain. But really, what we have to look forward to is in April, Jupiter is going to move into the very intuitive, devotion-oriented constellation Pisces, and he will remain there for basically about a year. And for the duration of Jupiter's tenure in Pisces, what we should all really try to cultivate is a sense of universal empathy. That we should try like to pray more for others, pray more for the world, put yourself more in tune with the consciousness of Divine Mother's love, which is boundaryless. And but how do we practice this? Well, as they say, charity begins in the home. Practice loving your loved ones more greatly. Practice asking God to love your loved ones through you. That would be very Jupiter in Pisces like, is actually feeling the love of God flowing through you as a living experience to other people. And then through that, feeling your heart expanding into that love. And that will happen for most of next year, starting around April. And then in May, Saturn will take a brief hiatus out of the constellation Capricorn and he'll move into Aquarius from about May to end of July. But that'll be a nice time. It will be, I think, a more expansive time, hopefully, when some will be able to begin exploring a little bit more.
Could you put your contact information in the chat box, and then maybe I could email you or get a reading from you or something. I've got I was born on Lahiri's Maha Samadhi Day on the 26th of September. And my natal Jupiter is in on the 27th degree of Aries in retrograde. And I've got like 6 moons in a row that are at 27 degrees of
Not to
all the
worry,
cardinal
Alex.
signs. So, well,
Not to worry.
if you put your information in the chat box, maybe I could send you an email. I'd even pay
Sure.
for it,
Sure, I'd be happy to connect about your astrological horoscope. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah, that's a little bit about perhaps the year to come. Some very positive things. I would focus, like I said, most of all on expanding your sympathy.
Okay.
Thank you, Keshava. One thing you touched on was you're going to be doing a program with Asha, and thought maybe you could share in general about things that are happening in Palo Alto, how you guys are sort of transitioning, in quotes, and what you will do that will be available to. I know you guys are doing a lot. I mean, I'm an avid watcher of Asha on during the week and stuff, and I know others are too, and you've got lots of recordings. But what we might be able excuse me, to join in to live, if that's happening, it'd be just nice to know a few of those things.
Sure. Let me think about that for just a second here. Because like you said, we've been transitioning now that COVID's restrictions are lightening. We're doing a lot more in person again. And so the Zoom satsangs we're sort of figuring out how and where to be placing those. Um, but something that jumps to mind immediately, Shanti is concluding her year-long Secrets of Emotional Healing. She's only got 2 more Fridays, but those are on Zoom. And you would get access to the whole year of recording, and they've been a wealth of wonderful inspiration. So those would be recommendable in my mind. Um, then we're going to be having pretty much coming up. We have our Christmas season is hitting. I mean, next week we start with a concert, and then it's 12 days of Christmas. We're going to do a new event every day for Christmas, which will be broadcast, but it won't be interactive over Zoom. So I think actually December might be fairly light on that account until yeah, the new year when perhaps we'll have some more classes that are aimed more specifically for this audience, for Zoom people being able to plug in and whatnot. So
Do you with your Raja Yoga? Because I think you teach or have helped out
I
with
do,
that in the
yeah.
past. Are you guys going to do any Raja Yogas via Zoom too, or is that because we have some? We usually teach Raja Yoga in person, but we it was very awkward during the pandemic. I think we tried it once, and it was just awkward.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
but we have people that and I tell them there's Ananda online, but I like to have options for people with that, and wondered what you guys are doing with that.
Yeah, I think we just finished a whole series of Raja Yoga entirely in person, and it worked really well for us again now. And so, unless COVID makes a turn for the worse, I think we'll probably stick to that, just because having people really come together makes for such a wonderful experience. And frankly, as perhaps we're all victim of, even some people who live very close to our temple, if we give the opportunity to plug in remotely, sometimes, oh, I don't really want to make the drive, and they'll elect to do it over Zoom. And so, in a way, we're actually trying to take away that opportunity to make people really come back to our temple again. So, anyway, not Raja Yoga, but other offerings. Like we'll be doing an Inspire Your Meditation class, which is a 4 week just reinvigoration of the basics of meditation and Hong Sa in the new year. That will be on Zoom and things like that. So,
Okay. So, anyway, if you would like to take us, close us out, Keshava, with Land Beyond My Dreams, that would
sure.
be really wonderful. And we'll come back to just say a brief goodbye to everybody, but this will be really beautiful. So,
Perfect.
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you, Pam and Sam, again, just, all of 13 hours later after the Kriya. Here we are. In the land beyond my dreams, in the land beyond my dreams, where no clouds come and golden dreams dwell, where no clouds come and golden dreams dwell, I sit by life's well in the land beyond my dreams, in the land beyond my dreams. Heart to heart meeting, spirit and soul's greeting. Heart to heart meeting, spirit and soul's meeting. In the land beyond my dreams. In the land beyond my dreams. The ark is waiting, and I am dreaming. The ark is waiting, and I am dreaming of the land beyond my dreams, of the land beyond my dreams. In the ark of silence, silently I go. In the ark of silence, silently I go to the land beyond my dreams. to the land beyond my dreams. The ark is waiting, and I am dreaming. The ark is waiting, and I am dreaming. The ark is waiting, and I am dreaming. The ark is waiting, and I am dreaming of the land beyond my dreams, of the land beyond my dreams, of the land beyond my dreams.
Thank you so much, Keshava. That was beautiful. And we just thank you for all that you shared with us today. And blessings to our spiritual family in Palo Alto. Give our blessings to everyone.
Thank you.
So, everyone, if you want to wave goodbye one last time, we're going to sign off for the day. We wish everybody a wonderful Sunday. And as we say, namaste, y'all.
Namaste, y'all.
Ah,
Nice
there
to
they
see all
are.
your
Have a Monterey
faces.
day.
Have a great day, everybody. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Jai Guru. Jai Guru.
Bye.
Hi, Guru.
What's this? I didn't get to see Susan.